This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello there and welcome to Global Business Africa. We'll be giving you insight into Africa's business and financial markets. I'm Uche Okoronkwo coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. Let's start with a look at the markets. Emerging market stocks came off record highs today. However, analysts say they're still on track for strong gains for a fourth straight week. And that's because Biden's administration's focus on tackling the pandemic and supporting an economic recovery does bode well for the U.S. economy. Meanwhile, on the continent, South Africa's JSE fell today, but it was holding out against the risk-off mood in markets. We saw Mr. Price Group jumping as much as 7.7% in a positive reaction to the retailer's trading update. Also, global tech investor and market heavyweight Naspers did provide the most support to the overall market. It climbed 2% on the day to a record high, as of course shares of the firm, partly owned by Chinese online giant Tencent, climbed for a third day straight. Now, also coming up on today's show. Tourism and travel in Tanzania suffers a serious setback after UK travel ban. And Alphabet, Google's parent company, shuts down its Loon internet balloon project. Also, U.S. President Joe Biden suspends new oil and gas drilling. Now, our starting point tonight is in the UK. The government has extended its ban on travel from Southern Africa to Tanzania and the Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, this is in an attempt to block the new South African COVID-19 variant. The new measures came into effect at 4 a.m. on Friday, the 22nd of January. The rule, however, does not apply to British and Irish nationals, as well as those with residency rights. Now, since December 23rd, entry to the UK has been banned for people arriving from South Africa, apart from British nationals or residents who have been subject to an isolation period. The ban has since been extended to other neighboring nations in Southern Africa, and scientists are saying the new South African COVID-19 variant is about 50% more infectious and contains mutations that may be resistant to immunity from previous coronavirus infection. Well, let's find out how this is affecting Tanzania. Daniel Kijo now joins us in Dar es Salaam. Great to have you, Daniel, on the show with us. Now, of course, Tanzania joins the DRC and other countries around the southern part of Africa on that UK ban list. Give us a sense of what has been the government's reaction to this news.
Hi, Uche. What we do know that indeed the ban has come into force today, just as the UK government has announced. So travelers from Tanzania and, of course, the DRC, as you said, cannot enter, the UK. Now, there's not been any official word from the Tanzanian government with regards to responding or reacting to this travel ban notice. In fact, we haven't heard or even heard anything from the government or health ministry whether this new strand of the coronavirus, the South African variant of the coronavirus, is in Tanzania. So there's no word of that. We do know, obviously, the government had removed the 14-day mandatory quarantine requirement for visitor on arrival. But of course, the temperature checks at ports of entry are still going on. So obviously, if a traveler shows signs of COVID-19, they will undergo further enhanced screening and then might be required to take a COVID-19 test and a possible 14-day quarantine. So as it stands, Uche, there has been no confirmation no reaction from the Tanzanian government.
Well, we do have to leave it there because of the phone line, but always good to see you, Daniel. That, of course, is Daniel Kijo joining us there in Dar es Salaam. Well, let's move on now. Annual inflation in Nigeria rose in December 2020 for the 16th straight month to a more than 3-year high. The rate climbed to 15.75% in the month as rising food costs lifted the price index. Now, as CGTN's Phili Haza explores from Abuja, Africa's most populous nation is facing its worst economic crisis in decades, triggered by a coronavirus-induced crash in oil prices that, of course, has hammered state revenues, creating large financing needs and, of course, weakening the naira currency.
42 years old Abdul Idris sells foodstuffs at a local market on the outskirts of Abuja. He says business has been slow because customers are complaining that the items are too expensive.
Like rice, I sell 15 bags, 10 bags, even 20 bags in a day. But now, because of the increasement of the price of all this commodity, to sell 1 bag in a day now, the thing hard.
Nigeria is facing its highest rate of inflation in more than 3 years at 15.75%, according to the National Bureau of Statistics. The country's economy is also in a recession, and the value of the local currency, the naira, has dropped significantly against other foreign currencies like the United States dollar. As a result, the prices of most products, including food items imported into the country, are negatively affected.
During the Christmas period, things are always hiked, but this time around it was like times 3. There were things we used to buy. For instance, we used to buy a gallon of oil, but now we couldn't buy a gallon. We had to buy a smaller liter.
I've been in market now for like 1 hour plus now. Seriously, I can't really buy anything because price of things have increased. You understand what it takes. The one I have, I was able to buy just little.
I went there to buy yam, very high. I couldn't buy as much as I wanted to buy. I managed to buy just few tubers so that we can manage.
The average cost of a bag of rice is currently a little less than $100. This time last year, it was just over $50. Experts say this could push more people into poverty because the incomes of most Nigerians have not risen over that period.
According to the World Bank, a further 7 million Nigerians may slip into poverty this year. Analysts say the government will need to cut down on taxes on food items as a way to reduce the inflation rate.
Government is increasing taxes virtually every day. Now, if you increase tax, what happened clearly is that the price of those items in the market also increased. The value of the tax was increased recently from 5% to 7.5% or so. And that means that is going to add to the price of those products in the marketplace. They can make sure that those products are not valuable, and that can also bring the inflation rate down.
President Muhammadu Buhari has instructed the Central Bank of Nigeria to also restrict food imports to reduce further strain on the naira and instead boost local farm production. The aim is to reduce inflation, ease the burden on consumers, and improve sales for the likes of Abdul. Phil Ihaza, CGTN, Abuja.
Well, let's head to Zambia now. The country's mining investment arm, Zambia Consolidated Copper Mines, has agreed to take on $1.5 billion in debt in exchange for full control of Mopani copper mines. Now, the mine was previously owned by Glencore. The Swiss commodities trader and mining firm sought to shut the mine last year due to COVID-19 disruptions and, of course, lower copper prices. Now, under the new deal terms, Glencore will retain buying rights to Mopani's copper. ZCCM will repay the loan by giving Glencore creditors about 3% of Mopani's gross revenue from 2021 to 2023 and between 10% and 17.5% of gross revenue from then on. The transaction is expected to go ahead within the next 3 months. Meanwhile, China is planning to increase its investment in Egypt to $15 billion from the nearly $8 billion invested so far. Beijing has been Cairo's largest trade partner and exporter since 2012. And as CGTN's Yasser Hakim now reports, the world's second biggest economy is now doubling down on its capital investments in the North African nation.
China's embassy in Cairo has announced that 9 Chinese companies have signed agreements to invest in Egypt in 2021, opening the door for more projects to be established in the North African state. The embassy said the companies will invest in medical supplies, steel, textiles, transportation, renewable energy, recycling, and water waste treatment.
These investments exceed $90 million each. And that's at a time when most countries have suspended investments locally, let alone investing abroad. For these companies to come and invest here is a sign of confidence in the Egyptian economy. Remember, amidst the pandemic in 2020, China had the highest economic growth in the world, and Egypt was also among the highest. It shows that cooperation between the two nations could be fruitful.
According to the Chinese embassy, China's direct investments in Egypt increased by over 19% in 2020, in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic. Bilateral trade also increased by 10% amid the COVID-19 compared to 2019. Experts say Chinese cooperation is vital to the growth of North African nations' economy, and there is a lot to learn from the Chinese experience in development.
The Chinese success story is unprecedented in human history. No country has ever managed to post economic growth of 10% annually for 30 years. When they started the reforms, they had the same problems we face now. Problems in the workforce, unemployment, currency, markets and expertise. They were suffering back then and have achieved this success to become a world power. We have to learn from this experience and how to adopt what's suitable for our reforms.
Chinese firms have invested nearly $8 billion in Egypt over the last few years. There's optimism much more funds will be pumped in the economy going forward. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
And now a quick look at other corporate headlines today. South African retailer Mr. Price has reported a 5.8% rise in its third quarter retail sales. Now, Mr. Price attributes the growth to COVID-19 relief packages and demand for household items as people worked from home during the pandemic. In the period under review, the budget clothing and homeware retailer says that total retail sales increased to about $500 million. Its apparel division grew sales by 3.9%, while its home business expanded sales by 10.6%. Meanwhile, state-owned power utility firm Kenya Power has rolled out a smart metering project that aims to benefit 55,000 customers in the SME sector. The $11 million project is funded by the World Bank, and it is part of the Kenya Electricity Modernization Project. It's due to be completed by June 30th, 2021. The new metering system gives customers access to real-time information on their consumption patterns and billing. It will allow users to assess their energy consumption through an online customer portal. Meanwhile, Google has threatened to pull its search engine from Australia. That's if the government proceeds with a new code that will force the tech giant and Facebook to pay media companies for the right to use their content. Australia is on course to pass laws that will make tech giants negotiate payments with local publishers and broadcasters for content included in search results or news feeds. If they cannot strike a deal, a government-appointed arbitrator will decide the price. And finally, Air France KLM's Dutch arm is cutting as many as 1,000 jobs in 2021. KLM, which already cut about 5,000 jobs last year, joined other airlines operating in the Netherlands to criticize a proposed requirement for all inbound passengers to show a negative result from a fast COVID-19 test, which is taken within 4 hours of boarding a plane. Now, the measures will mean the carrier will have to cancel about 60% of remaining flights from Friday, 22nd of January. And that's a look at our corporate headlines. We are heading into a short break now, but still coming up on the show. Alphabet, Google's parent company, shuts down its Loon Internet Balloon project. And the UK government unveils more than $500 million aid packages for cash-strapped Sudan.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business. Only on CGTN.
There's more to this place than just glorious landscapes. There's more to it than just, say, Table Mountain or glorious, endless salt flats. There's more to it than countries that are home to some of the deepest mines in the world. There is so much more to this place, even if it is home to some of the finest diamonds on the planet. It is the sheer diversity of the people who call Southern Africa home and the relentless drive to make it a better place that make it so special. And we know that because this too is home. No one knows Southern Africa like we do. CGTN, see the difference.
Welcome back. Now, Google's parent company, Alphabet, has shelved plans of using a fleet of balloons to beam high-speed internet in remote parts of the world. The firm is winding down Loon, a 9-year-old project and a 2.5-year-old spin-off firm. This is after failing to find a substantiable business model and partners for one of its most prominent moonshot projects. The demise of Loon comes a year after the Android maker ended Google Station, its other major connectivity effort to bring internet to the next billion users. Well, just last year, Loon had secured approval from the government of Kenya to launch first balloons to provide commercial connectivity services, something it did successfully achieve months later, giving an impression that things were moving in the right direction. Well, let's delve further into the demise of that project. We're joined by Professor Bitange Ndemo. He's one of Kenya's ICT experts and a former top government official in Kenya's ICT sector. He's also a current professor at the University of Nairobi. Great to have you with us on the show today, Mr. Ndemo. Now, of course, Loon was presented to us as a less expensive alternative to cell towers. They also said that it will solve the problems of providing fast connectivity on a large scale to remote areas in the country. So explain to us your understanding of the project's commercial limitations. Was it a business model problem or the technology? What's your take on that?
Was both. They couldn't lower the costs significantly enough to compete with the emerging new technologies. If you look at what is happening is that we are seeing many companies investing in 5G through the satellite, which will be much more cheaper because the business model for that would be more cheaper than putting up those balloons from one place. Number two is that it is costly and time consuming to talk to every individual government in order to deploy those balloons. These companies are used to come what we call OTT, over the top, without even consulting the countries that they are working in. So it became very difficult for them to seek permission in Kenya. Then they move to another country to seek permission. It becomes very expensive. And that is why possibly they decided that they would probably invest in 5G satellite technology, which will be much faster. That is why they said they did not fail, but they're probably moving to a much cheaper technology.
And it is interesting you say that, because one of the project's founders said that the growing demand for mobile connectivity made cell towers more cost-effective in more parts of the world. And that, of course, diminished the need for Loon going forward. But what's the case in Kenya? Is Kenya facing a similar situation?
There are several parts. It is not cost-effective to deploy the base stations for terrestrial coverage. So we would still need either satellite in northern part of Kenya or the similar equipment like the balloons in order to cover the entire population. But 95% of the country is well covered with cell towers. They are very expensive if there is no business case, and there are new models which the regulator is trying to introduce where they can share, but still even with sharing, some parts of these countries not cost effective to make such an investment.
Now, a lot of people, or rather a lot of Kenyans, are seeing Loon's failure as a setback in terms of fighting to provide stable, reliable and fast connectivity in the country and in Africa as a whole. Do you think that this is a major setback?
It is not, because very soon many companies will probably provide free internet using satellite, because the business models can be able to support such. So it's not a failure, but you are going to see very quickly a new technology stepping in where they have been working at. You realize that in those parts, we used to cover them using satellite, which was very expensive, of course, but with the advent of 5G, which is trying to compete with the terrestrial 5G, we can find a solution very quickly.
Well, let's delve further into that new technology. For example, we know Tesla is talking about using satellites in near-Earth orbit to provide reliable connectivity to the continent. Are there any other similar projects that you have got your eye on that you think we're going to see coming up soon?
Facebook, for example, is doing a lot of work in that space, and I think there are more than 10 companies fighting to deploy 5G satellite technology, provide high-speed broadband. And what has happened is that the technology has improved so much that you can offer so much throughput for much less cost than it was before. And there is a business case for that as we move into the fourth industrial revolution with technologies like IoT, that they can provide solutions across the world. So with such solutions, you'll find that there is more usage, and then the cost drops significantly for other users to take advantage of.
Well, there's certainly a lot to explore on that topic, but we do have to leave it there today. Thank you so much for joining us on the show, Mr. Ndemo. That, of course, is Professor Bitange Ndemo. He's one of Kenya's ICT experts and, of course, a professor at University of Nairobi's Business School. Well, let's turn our attention now to South Africa. Conspiracy theories around 5G have reached the country. Similar scenes of those in the UK could be seen in the country's KwaZulu-Natal province recently, when 2 new 5G towers were torched. Some are claiming that 5G technology is causing the rapid spread of the coronavirus. Now, Sumitra Naidu tells us more. Conspiracy theories around a 5G. Take a look.
Videos of the towers burnt made the rounds on social media recently, causing fear and panic amongst people already worried about the spread of COVID.
One of the reasons why people think that way is because COVID came to the world in 2019, and 5G rollout also started in 2019. These two things are correlated. They are not causal. So there is no causal relationship between 5G, which is electromagnetic waves, to COVID-19, which is a virus. Electromagnetic waves simply do not cause a virus.
Government has been slow to take action, but the ANC councillor involved in spreading his thoughts of a possible link was called to order. It was too late, though, for the 2 towers belonging to Vodacom and MTN.
The reason that the SACF is responding on the issue in terms of our members is because this is an industry issue. This is not specific to any single operator. We are all aware that the towers of some operators were torched. There's absolutely no link between COVID-19 and 5G. We think that it's really a lack of knowledge which is what has resulted in people buying into conspiracy theories.
The regulator, too, has discredited claims of any link between 5G and COVID-19 and is appealing to citizens not to believe these theories that have no scientific evidence.
ICASA obviously has been monitoring what has been happening out there with regards to all these conspiracy theories about 5G network causing diseases or ailments such as COVID-19. As the authority, we believe that this is not true and it's not based on any science or any research. These are just conspiracy theories. We have filed the 5G network by giving it to some of the industry players. They applied for just to test the 5G network way before the novel coronavirus. These tests have been happening for the past couple of years, and we have received reports to that effect.
5G is already being rolled out in some parts of the country. South Africans are eager to gain access to faster speeds. A few companies have also applied for spectrum, which will enhance internet speeds even further and clear up congestion. Sumitra Naidu, CGTN, Johannesburg, South Africa.
Meanwhile, South Africa's headline consumer price inflation slowed to 3.1% in December, which is the slowest since 2004. Now, data released by Statistics South Africa showed that the consumer price index rose to 0.2% on a month-on-month basis in December from 0.0% in the previous month. Here's Angelo Coppola with more.
Meanwhile, core inflation, which excludes prices of food, non-alcoholic beverages, fuel and energy, was at 3.3% year-on-year in December, the same as in November.
The muted inflation is a function of the economy as much as it is an influencer on interest rate decisions. That's a bit of a feedback loop because overarchingly it's a very weak economy that's translating into feeble inflation.
Given this low inflation rate environment, 15 of 16 economists polled said that the country's interest rates would remain the same at the latest monetary policy meeting.
And it doesn't look like any time soon that inflation is going to sit up and threaten interest rates or galvanize the MPC into hiking rates in response to higher inflation.
While the Monetary Policy Committee is always forward-looking on interest rates, it spends a fair amount of time considering where the inflation will go in the future.
In the same breath, there is also an acknowledgement in the SARB's forecasts that inflation is likely to head higher, not spectacularly or dramatically higher over the course of the year, but that inflation is likely to finish the year higher than it started. And those factors put together translated into a flat interest rate decision.
Maintaining the gap between interest rates and inflation rates remains a key focus point for the Reserve Bank.
Given just how fragile the economy is and how uncertain the environment is, I think it would be bold for anyone to venture too far into forecasting water until we've got a clearer line of sight as to just how the world economy, commodity prices, oil prices, and the South African economy and the rand, which is an important influencer on inflation, are all responding to the COVID-19 environment and to 21 economic recovery.
While the muted inflation rate is good news for many consumers, it's bad news because it shows that the economy is in dire straits and there's no prospect of it emerging anytime soon. I'm Angelo Coppola for CGTN in Johannesburg, South Africa.
Well, let's move on now. Britain's top diplomat has announced almost $55 million in aid to Sudan and around $455 million to clear its arrears to the African Development Bank. Now, Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab arrived in Khartoum late Wednesday on the first visit by a British Foreign Secretary to the East African nation in over a decade. Raab signed a memorandum of understanding with Sudan's finance minister, which provides for the disbursement of $54.9 million to the Sudan Family Support Program. At the meeting, the government officials discussed Sudan's economic reforms, as well as its recent border tensions with Ethiopia, which of course triggered deadly clashes in recent weeks, and Addis Ababa's controversial dam on the Blue Nile.
UK assistance to Sudan will be £125 million this financial year.
UK programmes are helping to build the stability and support the establishment of a new parliament so that the people of Sudan have proper democratic accountability. And earlier today I signed a memorandum of understanding with Dr. Hiba, and it provides £40 million to the Sudan Family Support Programme.
The government of Sudan had presented its position on the civilian protection program that started with the drawdown of UNIMED, leaving Darfur. Yes, it is true that we have very unfortunate incidents in Darfur since the announcement of the pullout of UNIMED. But then again, we had a few of these incidences when UNIMED was there as well.
And Tunisia's pandemic-ravaged tourism industry is staring at another period of uncertainty. This as the country grapples to contain a surge in COVID-19 infections. Now, the North African nation's COVID-19 task force imposed new restrictions that complicate recovery for the vital tourism sector, whose revenue plunged 65% in 2020. From Tunis, here is CGTN's Adnan Shaushi with the details.
The 4-day general lockdown imposed in Tunisia from January 14th to 17th will be followed by a targeted lockdown that lasts until January 24th. All public and private events, gatherings and intercity travel have been banned, while the curfew is still in place. Players in the tourism industry have denounced the new measures, which they say have paralyzed the industry, but the government maintains that the restrictions are necessary to safeguard lives.
We are aware of the negative repercussions of the pandemic and the lockdown on all economical sectors. Tourism and related activities were hit hard. We regret the damage caused by these restrictions, but the measures are necessary to curb the rate of infections and improve the epidemiological situation.
The Tunisian Hotel Federation has evaluated the impact of the pandemic and the lockdown, which halted mobility globally. The pandemic decimated the country's crucial tourism industry, as revenues plunged by 65% in 2020 compared to 2019 to around $746 million.
2020 was a catastrophic year for tourism. This industry employs some 400,000 direct jobs, and the hotel sector employs 80,000 people. 27,000 jobs were lost in 2 months. The unemployment rate is very high, and the purchasing power of these people is very low. The crisis caused by the tourism industry will lead to the loss of 1 million direct and indirect jobs. This pillar of economy is now facing a huge risk.
Analysts assert that more of the government's targeted support and relief measures will be needed for the industry to continue operating after the end of the pandemic.
The tourism industry will be the last sector to revive because it is the most affected. It is painful to see how tourism has been devastated by the COVID-19 pandemic. The solution is not immediate, but the government's relief effort is considerable. We need to survive and avoid bankruptcy until the end of the crisis. However, keeping the businesses open will be impossible for 70% of the industry.
Tunisia's Tourism and Handicrafts Ministry has set up a joint committee tasked with the revival of the post-COVID-19 tourist activity. This committee is in charge of drawing up an integrated recovery plan to ensure the battered sector recovers from the fallout.
According to the National Institute of Statistics, the COVID-19 crisis is having sweeping consequences on tourism jobs, hotels and travel agencies. Experts believe that economic recovery would be impossible without a mass national and international vaccination plan. Adnan Shawashi, CGTN, Tunis.
You are watching Global Business Africa. We're going to take a quick break now, but still coming up on the show. U.S. President Joe Biden suspends new oil and gas drilling. And China's foreign exchange reserves rise close to a 5-year high.
taken me completely out of my depth. But at the same time, it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant. Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? What happens there? Or what do you make happen for yourself? If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
Well, here's a quick recap of today's top headlines. The UK government has extended its ban on travel from Southern Africa to Tanzania and the Democratic Republic of Congo in an attempt to block the new South African COVID-19 variant. Now, the new measures came into effect at 4 a.m. on Friday, the 22nd of January. Since December 23rd, entry to the UK has been banned for people arriving from South Africa, apart from British nationals or residents who have been subject to an isolation period. Meanwhile, Mozambique is expected to be hit by a tropical cyclone on Saturday. Currently, Tropical Storm Eloise is over the Mozambique Channel. The UN's humanitarian agency is warning the storm could intensify into a tropical cyclone, causing widespread flooding. Now, forecasts show that the cyclone will slam into the port city of Beira. 2 years ago, Cyclone Idai devastated Beira, displacing thousands of residents and killing over 1,000 people across Mozambique, Malawi, and Zimbabwe. And finally, the Central African Republic has declared a state of emergency. The move aims to crack down on militiamen who have been launching attacks on civilians. Now, government spokesperson Albert Yaloke has said the state of emergency will quicken military action. The armed groups have been carrying out the attacks to protest against President Faustin Touadera's win in the December 27th poll. And that is a recap of today's top headlines. Well, let's turn our attention now to some international news. U.S. President Joe Biden's administration has temporarily suspended oil and gas permits on federal lands and waters. Now, the move is the latest in a series of orders aimed at fighting climate change and tamping down on the U.S. fossil fuel industry. Biden had pledged to permanently ban new drilling on federal land. Federal leases account for a quarter of the country's crude oil output, making them a big contributor to energy supply, but also to America's greenhouse gas emissions. The suspension has been welcomed by environmentalists, but it has been criticized by the oil and gas industry, which argues that the move could threaten the economy. And elsewhere, China's foreign exchange reserves have risen to nearly half a decade high amid a volatile 2020. Well, CGTN's Gao Ang breaks down the numbers for us.
As China's forex market continues its steady run,
Officials say the country's foreign exchange reserves grew to over $3.2 trillion by the end of 2020, up over $108 billion year on year.
China's foreign exchange reserves plays an important role in global financial markets through responsible long-term investments. China respects international market rules and industry practices and promotes the stability and development of the international financial market.
Officials say the maturity of China's foreign exchange market has increased significantly, and market expectations have become more rational. Wang Dan, the chief economist at Hang Seng Bank, says there are two driving forces behind the increase.
And one most important driving force is the RMB appreciation. And that is partly because of the trade surplus surging in 2020 after the pandemic. And then also because China adopted a relatively conservative monetary stance after the outbreak in March. So the domestic and foreign interest rate spread has been kept high, and there was a strong momentum for foreign currencies to be converted into yuan.
Facing a complex international environment and geopolitical tensions, Wang says the general principle of China's central bank is to diversify its holdings of foreign currencies. But she warns this will not be easy.
Right now, the biggest component of China's foreign reserve is still dollar-denominated assets. But I do think over time, especially in the coming 2-3 years, the reduction in the dollar-denominated assets will go down. But the pace may not be as fast as many people have anticipated because the liquidity of other currency-denominated assets are not nearly as good as dollars.
Officials say the RMB has rebounded against the US dollar since the second half of 2020, thanks to China's pandemic control efforts. Rising consumption and foreign trade, as well as a stable monetary policy, have also played a role. Officials say uncertainties will remain in the international financial market for 2021. Facing this challenging situation, China says it will strengthen monitoring and risk assessments and at the same time continue to deepen reform and opening up. Gang, CGTN, Beijing.
Meanwhile, China's shipbuilding industry has become the biggest in the world, surpassing industry leaders such as South Korea and Japan in 2020. Now, the country's industry for ship repairs has also witnessed a sharp rise over the past year as the coronavirus upends global manufacturing and supply chains. Our reporter Li Junhua has more.
This is one of the largest companies for ship repairs in all China. Despite headwinds from the coronavirus pandemic, the company's business is booming and staff are working around the clock as demand spikes. Over 90% of the orders of the company are from abroad. During the pandemic, stringent measures are taken to ensure safety. We boarded one of the ships under repair.
If we count as daily base, usually we repair. For our shipyard, we repair around every day around 20 to 30. Sometimes we also over 30 vessels in the same time in the shipyard.
Apart from conventional ships, the company has taken several orders to repair high-end liquefied natural gas vessels as the pandemic forces ports in many other countries to shut down.
First one is the local government, including Shanghai Municipal, Chongming District, and the port authorities like immigration, MSA, and the customer. They take many measures to help the shipyard. The second reason, I think we got the well preparation for the high-value ships, like the LNG carriers. We got the several LNG carriers repair and conversion projects.
China's shipbuilding orders have exceeded those of South Korea, making it the world's largest shipbuilding country in 2020. Figures show China's three major indicators in the industry: completed ships, new orders, and orders on hand are all in leading positions worldwide.
During the pandemic, some of the business transferred their orders from other countries to China, and including the shipbuilding and repair and maintenance industry. But if they have the low cost, if they have the competitiveness, if they have better services, they can keep the customers. I'm sure about that.
This follows the trend of developed countries transferring their business to developing countries such as China due to environmental concerns. The business of shipbuilding and repairs is quite labor, capital and tech intensive. China has been a regional hub for about a decade now. Its biggest competitors are South Korea and Japan, though the country is still lagging behind in repairing high-end cruise ships. Li Jianhua, CGTN, Shanghai.
Now, as more people stay at home during the coronavirus pandemic, it is generating an economy in itself. Products for the stay-at-home economy will be here to stay for a while, especially clothes geared more towards comfort and style at home. Here's our Zhang Shishwan with more.
Featuring earth-toned hues and loose styles, Uniqlo's newly launched spring-summer collection fits people's flexible work times well, as they are now paying more attention to their lives at home.
We're spending a lot more time at home, and I want to dress more fashionably. It puts me in a better mood. The clothes here are utilitarian, like the oversized sweaters.
Many brands have launched very basic products featuring daily casual styles. This is largely related to the pandemic. Brands are more willing to have products that fit the tastes of a wider range of consumers.
And many other foreign fashion brands are also working to launch more casual wear. Luxury brand Dior launched its first capsule collection entirely dedicated to loungewear. Called Chez Moi, it offers everything from silky pajama sets to bathrobes, a cashmere poncho. Zara also launched its first ever lingerie collection last October with their 158 pieces. The increasing number of fashion brands that are working to have their products catering more to people's longer at-home time has created new competitions in the market. And so traditional household clothing brands are finding new ways to grab the attention of young consumers who are willing to pay a great deal more for the styles. 83-year-old 3GONE started to work with many famous IPs last year, such as domestic comic character Luo Xiaohei, characters from the Disney cartoon Frozen 2, and magazine lingerie. One of its bestsellers is the newly released household clothes series featuring elements from the Palace Museum. To lure more young consumers, the brand has also cooperated with renowned singer Shou Junchao, promoting 3GONE's new series featuring the Palace Museum. The brand even made its debut at the New York Fashion Week last year. These strategies have contributed to an upward trend in sales for the brand.
Most of our sales usually came from our physical stores. Even though they were closed due to the pandemic, our sales of household clothes jumped 20% from a year earlier. And more young people are showing an interest in our brand. In September, our number of Generation Z customers was much higher than the rest of the garment industry overall.
According to an annual industry report, 75 to 80% of consumers will choose to buy household clothes during the next 5 years. And data from research firm II Media shows that comfort, quality, and utility have become the major elements that affected Chinese consumers' purchasing decisions in household clothing. And casual clothing like sports trousers also saw a jump in sales last year. Zhang Shishun, ICS for CGTN, Shanghai.
Now imagine scaling the Great Wall of China or floating down the Amazon River in the comfort of your own bed. Well, virtual tourism may be the safest and latest way to travel in light of the pandemic. In Colombia, one company is taking the lead. Michelle Begue has more from Bogota.
Colombia's tourism industry was breaking records in 2019. That all came crashing down in 2020 with the pandemic. One Colombian tourism company decided to take their exotic destinations into the living rooms around the world. The company started compiling its audio-visual content to create virtual tours.
Many of our guides had personal audiovisual material, and we had never explored this. For example, images of the almost 2,000 varieties of bird species in Colombia.
What they found was a new business opportunity. The company called Outlanders began offering personalized tours with local guides who share their knowledge and answer questions. The audiovisual material gives virtual travelers a first-hand look at some of the country's most remote regions.
Finding new ways to do tourism is vital for this sector, which has taken a huge hit with the pandemic. According to the United Nations World Tourism Organization, international arrivals tumbled last year 81% in July and 79% in August, typically the two peak travel months in the Northern Hemisphere.
In Colombia, there was a lot of growth, 5 or 6% annual growth in tourism, which was higher than the international average growth. And so there is a high expectation and investment in the tourism infrastructure.
Outlander's founder says that while tourism is down, they have hosted more than 2,000 virtual tourists. Some even flew to these tourism spots once flights in Colombia reopened. But this company says they are planning to continue this new venture as it connects with clientele they had never been able to reach before.
The interesting part is that many people have been able to see parts of the country that they would never have been able to travel to because of time or medical constraints or even age, when they can't go to these challenging nature tours.
This nature tour is taking a page from nature, adapting and evolving for survival. Michelle Bege, CGTN, Bogotá, Colombia.
Well, let's shift focus now and take a look at commodity markets. Oil prices were down today, with Brent crude falling over 2%. They, of course, are currently weighed down by worries that new pandemic restrictions in China will curb fuel demand in the world's biggest oil importer. Meanwhile, gold also inching lower today as U.S. Treasury yields ticked up. Now, traders say that gold is struggling a bit due to a lift in nominal yields, which came off the back of strong U.S. jobless claims numbers. Well, let's take a short break now, still coming up on the show. Nigeria rolls out a $50 support package for women traders affected by COVID-19 restrictions.
Africa is a continent of diversity, with varied climates and enchanting geography, and a people so distinct, but with a shared enduring spirit. We are at the heart of the continent, to bring you the untold stories.
Let's have a look.
We celebrate Africa as it shapes its own destiny.
Tunis, Cairo,
Juba,
Johannesburg, Ethiopia,
Tanzania.
Africa Live. Find your voice.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Now, Nigeria has kicked off a program that will empower 160,000 rural women across the nation with grants of $50. As Kelechi Mekalam now reports, the government-assisted plan seeks to alleviate the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic and the related economic downturn that has worsened the plight of women in rural Africa.
Helen Thomas earns less than $3 daily from frying yam, bean cake and potatoes in Jahi, a community in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. It's the only income available to her family of 5. Helen was forced to close down her corner shop following the COVID-19 lockdown. Her husband, too, lost his job. The government is set to disburse $50 each to thousands of women like her. It's a chance to boost her current output.
I buy on credit.
The following day, after I sell, I give them so that they will give it to me again. Since I started this business, no money have come in cash that is up to 20,000 in my hand. So I believe if that 20,000 naira enter cash like this, I can buy yam, I can buy maybe 5 mudu of beans, keep. I can buy ororo and keep. I know that one will not solve everything, but I know it will reduce all this credit.
Nigerian women are among the most vulnerable group. The International Labour Organization estimates that the ratio of men to women employment is over 82%. Targeting women in poor communities is seen as a welcome development. But how much impact would it have on the larger economy?
For such grants to be going to women this time is very welcome, because these are that's the section, this particular section of the population that will always provide food for the children. It's not going to impact the economy at all because of the number. The number, 100 and something thousand, will not, it's not even up to 1% of the population of women. So it's not going to impact the economy at all. For such thing to impact the economy, every so-called rural woman should be able to have an amount, not less than 10,000. But with the amount of money mentioned and the number of women it should reach, economy won't even know such money was spent putting into it.
Among other things, the COVID-19 pandemic disrupted millions of livelihoods, food security and businesses. Government's been assisting individuals, micro, small and medium-scale enterprises get back on their feet again. Ultimately, the goal is to give citizens the spending power that would help boost the nation's fragile economy. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
And before we leave you tonight, a quick look at Africa's currencies. South Africa's rand fell 1%, but it was set to add 0.9% for the week. And that's as the country's central bank also kept interest rates steady on a Thursday. Meanwhile, Nigeria's naira gaining marginally at the official importers and exporters window. It did remain largely stable, closing at around 394 naira per dollar at that NAFEX window. Well, that's it for this edition of Global Business Africa. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on your screen. You can also follow us on our various digital media platforms. From me, Uche Okoronkwo, and the rest of the team, thanks for